All right. Well, I think we're probably at the stage in our show where I get to introduce our guest speaker. So Warren and I go way back into when I was in New Zealand. So we've known each other since that time as well too. He's here to talk to us about how to unlock financial freedom with some unconventional strategies. For those that don't know Warren, he is no stranger to webinars and the stage, and he's spoken to over 1,000 webinars. So he's done this over 1,000 times. So those of you just getting your feet wet, this is where you could be sort of several years down the track. I know he's been doing it for sort of 20 or 30 odd years, in this format. He's spoken with Richard Branson, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and some of the events that he's spoken at are places like the Financial Education Summit, 21st Century Education, and numerous international sovereignty seminars as well too. His expertise, he used to work in the tax office. It's all right, you can all stay here now. He doesn't work there anymore. He's the insider that brings all of that knowledge through, and certainly some of the things that are happening in the tax office over here definitely relevant in New Zealand as well, which is how I got to know Warren, because we could compare notes with what was happening in Australia and New Zealand. So he's got expertise in private foundations, tax strategies, and the underground movement, and really makes him a powerhouse of knowledge. So I'm really excited to have Warren here tonight to come and talk to us about all things financial and how to unlock your financial freedom with some unconventional strategies. So let's put your hands together and let's welcome to the stage Warren Black.
Gosh, I sound like a rock star after all that. Yeah, well, like I used to say to people, Nick, the ATO, you having worked for the ATO, I used to work for them, and now I've come to bring salvation to the masses and help you get out of the matrix. So it's fantastic to be on here today, and thank you for inviting me. And I was very excited to reconnect with Nick a couple of months ago. We met years ago, and like I said, we're both in the same crazy circles. I'm a little bit of an unconventional kind of individual, as Nick said. I'm a first-class nerd. I'm a qualified lawyer, accountant, financial planner, got honors and all that kind of crap. And at the same token, I remember when I got involved in the same circles Nick was involved in, kind of off-the-grid people, they originally thought I was a plant, and I'd been put in there to kind of, work for the system. And then once they realized they didn't, I was taught a whole lot of really good stuff. And yeah, so really today I'm gonna share some slides, if that's okay, Nick, and just walk everyone through.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep. Now there's a lot of slides here, and I go pretty fast, so hopefully, you can always listen to the recording afterwards, I'm sure, but let's just see how we go in terms of time. So yeah, escaping the tax financial matrix and learning the basics of getting out of it. And I like to tell people that's more how I like to see myself. I'm like the bridge between the matrix is what we do in what our business does. On the one side, you've got the system, which is designed to get everyone into it and make sure all the sheep are in the pen. Then you got those who want to be outside living off grid, but then there's those who are like, look, I just want to live a normal life, man. And I just want to enjoy life, run a business, have a family, and not basically have to live off grid hiding away with tinfoil hats, as fun as that would be. So it's learning to be like Neo, coming into the system when you need to, but getting out when you don't. Just raise your hand if that sounds a pretty cool thing, and that kind of is more what you're looking for. Just raise your hand or type a Y in the chat. Yeah, or whichever feels good. Yeah, awesome. So hopefully I'm on track. Look, no formal lawyer is a formal lawyer without a disclaimer. That's my disclaimer. I'm not here to give you any advice. I'm here to basically educate you and show you the way. And basically, if you do need professional advice, go to someone licensed by the system, which I once was, but I am not now. So pretty much, I always like to start with this, that when we see the kind of nonsense going on in the world that we're seeing today, what has been is what will be, and is nothing new under the sun. And that was said by a great philosopher. And we're not really seeing anything new. I mean, people keep repeating the same silly patterns. We keep doing the same things. And by and large, although I think overall at some level we've progressed, in many ways we haven't. And we're just simply doing the exact same things that we've done previously, which can be an absolute frustrating experience on the one hand and quite scary, but it also makes things quite manageable. And just as a little bit of an aside, I can remember one of the ways I got through COVID quite easily was I just did some research on how they handled previous pandemics. And by the time I'd finished, I'm like, well, whatever's going on here, the one thing we got to know for sure is there'll be vaccine mandates, there'll be lockdowns. And I worked everything out. And I even said to people, the vaccine mandates, the worst of them will be for 6 months. That seems to be what history shows. And by and large, you're able to predict almost the timing based on knowing history. And the good news is if you can do that and understand the times and cycles that we're in, you can not only protect your wealth, but you can prosper from it and come out of the whole experience a whole lot better than you did previously. And I found COVID for me only improved my life and business. It actually made it better, even though it was a really annoying, horrible, shitty, kind of crazy time. So it's really critical to focus as much on growing your wealth as protecting it. So that's kind of why there's three main things. I have a rule of thumb. I don't like to give more than 3 key points in any training. That seems to be about the magic number people can remember. So in terms of protecting and growing your wealth, pretty simply, there's 3 things I'm going to cover today. Is 1, how you can grow your wealth and prosper at this time, financial stuff. Number 2, how to minimize taxes and kind of make sure you don't get stolen from by really gold digging governments and others who would basically like to reap where they haven't sown, and how to protect your wealth from the many that like to take money as soon as you got it, because it's always easier for people to basically do that, to protect your wealth. So there's been nothing new under the sun, and you want to protect your wealth. Because the reality is we have threats ahead, and it's a bit like with COVID. The mistake people made was burying their head in the sand and hoping things wouldn't get worse, rather than facing the realities of where we're at. And the more I've been studying and talking with people, I think we're in a pretty grim place. And if you accept it, it's a little bit like knowing you're on the verge, you've got cancer early stages, like my sister-in-law discovered recently she had early stage cancer. Very fortunately, she discovered by more good chance and was able to get on and get treatment and get on top of it. If it had been about another month, she wouldn't be here. And it's a little bit like this right now in our economy and our financial situation and where we're at in the world. So we really want to be prepared for what we're dealing with. For some reason, the slides are doing weird things on me. Hang on. I don't know it's doing stuff it doesn't normally do. Look, it's fair to say that the New World Order is here right now. I mean, it's just fair to say that, unfortunately. And this, this is what I've been telling my clients. In COVID phase 1, they came for your health. And look, there's a lot of things I don't know. If you asked me to do your tax return, I'd probably do worse than you. I haven't done my own for so long. I get my accountant to do it and things like that. And there's a lot of things I don't do well. But one thing I've found is by knowing history, having a father who was a historian and a political specialist who was on TV for it and everything, he taught me the importance of understanding history and politics. And I found that by understanding it, I was talking about what was coming long before anyone else was saying it, more not for any other reason than just research and history. And I pretty much got the COVID thing and the timings pretty much to the letter. And basically, I'm seeing similar things right now with wealth. I see COVID part 2 is really about getting people's wealth. And again, like COVID phase 1, there is a pathway through it. And not only a pathway through it, but a pathway for even more success, because wealth never disappears. It just transfers. And all that will happen is there'll be a lot less middle class. There'll be a lot more wealthier people and a lot of people struggling. And just raise your hand if you want to be one of the people who are prospering more than ever and you're willing to put the hard work in to do it. I emphasize that, put the hard work in to do it, because it's a little bit like getting yourself physically strong. I mean, some of you, I know there's a couple of my clients on here, notice they know that I'm a little bit of a crazy guy. I do hiking, I'm going mountain climbing this weekend. I do pole dancing for a bit of fun. I just do crazy stuff just to literally keep myself sane. And I've got very good at what I do, more because I keep showing up, being consistent and doing the hard training and doing the hard work. I do HIIT workouts some 3 or 4 days a week. I just do stuff to keep in fitness and good health. And every time I do a HIIT workout, I don't want to do it, but I do it. And this is a secret to doing very well, if you're willing to put the time in. Because rest assured, we're heading towards this dictatorship, communism crap, or socialism. and it's never actually worked in history. And I always like to go back to spiritual books like the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita and saying ultimately we're really just spiritual beings living a human experience. It's one of the things that every major religion teaches. And that's how I see it. And if we're spiritual beings having a human experience, we can kind of watch detached, have a bit of a laugh, and realize that whatever's going on in the craziness, it's no different to a video game. You know, it's just, you got goodies and baddies and things like that. And ultimately, the main thing is to win the game and rather than get caught up in the game. And that's the basic teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, not to get too caught up with the game. So I've got like an insane amount of experience. I've got like, gosh, I did it again. It's just being a bit mean to me today. So basically, I've got like about, in fact, 25 odd years now in private practice or something like that. So I've been doing this a long time and kind of been doing all sorts of things. I always like to start anything to do with this from the art of war. Just mention in the chat or raise your hand if you've read that book or looked at it. It's an absolute gem. And anyone who wants to learn success in life, this is an absolute gem of a book to read this book. Basically, there's so many great quotes about how to win war. I was using this in COVID. I used to use this as a lawyer. I used to use this to beat regulators, to beat people in cases, to deal with family member issues when they were hostile to me. It's an absolute gem. And there's various millions of quotes. I could just keep you here all day, but this is the one I want to focus on now. The best time to plan for something that's hard is while it's easy. So what's the best time for a squirrel to gather nuts? Is it A, in autumn before winter, or B, in winter? A or B? Just type A. What do you reckon? Before winter or in winter? Absolutely. You want to do it before winter. The worst time to be gathering nuts is when winter hits and it's cold as shit. Bears go into hibernation, squirrels do stuff. Humans, we tend to sit there and hope shit doesn't happen. And being on Nick's training, I mean, Nick is a pretty awake guy. I'm highly doubting that people aren't. So basically the best time to plan for what's difficult is while it's really easy to do so. And right now, although I wouldn't say it's as easy as it was before, it's still relatively easy if you take action on this. So I always like to do this, and I know Nick would love this particular slide there. God basically creates man and women. We create governments. Governments are public servants. We are not their slaves. And you'll quickly learn that societies throughout thousands of years of history have always had sovereigns and slaves, pretty much the same. The Magna Carta was never done, for example, for slaves. It was done for the sovereigns who were pissed off at governments for interfering with their affairs. Most human rights Bill of Acts were actually more aimed at sovereigns who were pissed off that governments were trying to interfere with their ability to be sovereigns. If you're a slave, and which most people choose that path, that's different. You know, if you want to submit yourself under governments and corporations to take care of you, that's a whole different story. And there's a growing number of people who are like, we desire sovereignty now. We would like to be part of the sovereign elite and living separately from this system and still acknowledging it, not being at war with it, but at the same time, not being enslaved by it and being a sovereign. Just raise your hand if you're like, I am moving the path of sovereignty. I am not going to be getting caught up in this shit. I am absolutely. It's a big thing to do. So this is a really, really good book. It's A Sovereign Individual, written in 1995. Basically, the book is pretty much a summary of the Roman Empire's collapse and then comparing it to the Western world today. And the parallels are frightening. It's insane. They predicted pretty much that the world will break down like the Roman Empire in the Western world, and we'll end up with big nation-state governments breaking down. But what will happen is smaller sovereign communities will come out of this. But they said the period to get there would be very difficult, and people need to be ready for it. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We're seeing the start of it. We're seeing the move toward digital currencies, which they predicted in 1995. They predicted a huge rise of the internet. They predicted a lot of things that have happened. They predicted pandemics. They predicted stuff like that. We're kind of on the last later phases now of their blueprint for a collapse. So we're not that far off. And we're seeing very similar things right now, and COVID changed so much as we know it. And I meet people in Asia when I go to conferences. I chat with a lot of high net worth people. This seems to be about the period of time, depending on the person, that predicting things to get pretty ugly. The general feeling is 12 to 24 months to get your affairs in order. And again, is this something, if I was wrong on this, I would be absolutely wrapped, just to be clear. And it's kind of like insurance. You don't really want, I mean, no one likes getting insurance, but the best time to get insurance is basically when your car's driving perfectly well. The best time to get health insurance is when you're healthy as fuck. The worst time to get health insurance is when you just had a life-threatening illness, or basically get car insurance after you've crashed your car, or get house insurance after you've been robbed. So the best time to insure your wealth and position it for future is right now, and to move now like you have never moved before, because this is happening. And who's noticed this trend, by the way? Raise your hand if you've actually really noticed it when you talk to people, because I am really noticing it. Like I talk to my nephews and a lot of young people who are relatively intelligent. I don't know a single one who doesn't think that there needs to be some kind of reset, governments take people's money and force the rich out of their houses and things like that. I don't know anyone, basically, who isn't thinking like that to some degree. And that tells you where this is heading, because the governments and politicians have no interest in your health. They don't love you for your health. They never did COVID vaccines to look after your health. They just want to get votes. And if this is what the masses want, this is what the masses are going to get. There are more government task forces building up to herd the sheep in than ever before. And don't worry, it gets very positive as we go through it. It's just that to get positive, you want to see the problem, because great wealth and abundance and prosperity is built in solving big problems. That's the reality. That's the reality. The more, a great mentor once told me, if you help a few people, you'll make a small amount of money. If you help a reasonable amount of people, you'll make a reasonable amount of money. If you help a lot of people, you'll make a lot of money. If you solve a big problem across the world, you'll be a worldwide wealthy billionaire. So the more you can see this and see the opportunities, the better life can be. And I am more inspired than I've ever been before. So even though I'm sounding that, the reality is it just failed every time. It just doesn't work. And because once wealthy people see all their money being given to basically lazy people and people who are just kind of sitting there and believing they're owed a living, they're like, screw that, and they're out of there. California is getting deserted en masse for going to socialist route. I mean, the New York places are being deserted. They're in a mess. There was an article in Mainstream today about New York, about they're admitting that the migrant problem, raping the women en masse, the massive migrants, the financial problems that are hitting the crime, it's through the roof right across there. By contrast, people are flocking to Florida because Florida preserves freedom, preserves liberty, and is basically told the woke movement is a virus and told them where to go. And so keep in mind that as we're seeing these trends in Australia and in the Western world, this is always going to end the same way. And you want your plan B in place, you know? You want your plan B, and you want to also make sure you can navigate through this smoothly, because you can. I can assure you, you can. So even though this is inevitable, it doesn't mean that a collapse is inevitable for you. I can assure you. Quite the opposite, because wealth can transfer. You've just got to make sure you can predict what's happening, get a pretty good idea. And hey, worst case scenario, if you're wrong, the worst case scenario is you've got more money, you preserve more wealth, and you just maybe missed out on an opportunity or two you may have got into. But who here would be willing to gamble that the world is going to get miles better and there'll be no collapse? I highly doubt anyone would take a gamble with me if I took a bet with you down at the TAB. So again, it's just
it's quite good.
Sorry?
It's a bit comprehensive, but it covers everything, yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
To me, it's simple, as long as they follow it, you know. There's a lot there, but step 1, step 2, step 3, and you've got them, you know, they've got numbers on them.
Yep.
So it's got to follow what you ask for, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I also message her on Facebook.
Good.
It's in there.
Yeah.
Private Facebook.
Or even LinkedIn, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes.
Well, I'll give you an example here. Like bankruptcies and liquidations are at record high. However, I remember the last time this happened many years ago.
Luigi, what are you doing, please, Luigi?
Sorry, Ryan, keep going. It wasn't a question. It was just unmuted.
Yep. So bankruptcies and liquidations. I made a lot of money, and I'm actually thinking of starting this business again on the side of helping people with debts, negotiate debts. And I made a deal with them. I said to them, I knew from my legal experience, a few calls to the right people, I could get debts cut in half with banks and finance companies. I'd say, if I can cut your debt, let's say someone owed 50 grand, and I'd say, I can get your debt cut down to 25, 30K. Would you give me 25% or 30% of the saving I get? And they'd go, well, why wouldn't you? You know, no costs. I'd make a few calls. I'd make an easy 5 grand or 10 grand or so with a few calls. And so there's always opportunities basically in these times. So the bankruptcies and liquidations at record high is just keeping in mind that the more this is happening, there's going to be opportunities to buy businesses. There's going to be opportunities to invest in things at bargain basement prices. I was with someone the other day who said to me, oh my gosh, COVID, I made a fortune. When the prices dropped so low, I'm like, this is like a gift. And even recently, cryptocurrencies, which I'm pretty into myself, did a flash crash. And I remember my crypto partner and I go, you got to be kidding, let's buy in quick. So we quickly bought in, chucked a bit extra in, and of course, within no time, it was all back up there again. And so the thing is to know the times and seasons and see the opportunities that we're actually in, so to speak. So the realities of cost of living, this gives you a little bit of an idea why the system is destined to collapse. And even as far back as the early 2000s, I was quoting these statistics in my seminars, that by 2028, we're expecting about 1.5 to 1 working Australians to 1 pensioner. That's what we're expecting. So this is a little bit concerning and sobering. This is telling you that governments will not be able to afford the pensions unless they either tax you, steal your money, or to say to people you're on your own. So we're seeing soaring cost of living, and that never sustains, basically. We're seeing the housing prices like never before. The wage property price has just gone absolutely feral. So now housing is unaffordable, which, by the way, more than anything I'm finding is driving the socialist push. Almost every young person I know is like, we cannot buy a house and fuck them. We want to crash the economy, crash the houses and give us a chance to buy in. That's where people are saying. And from my research and talking to my contacts, we're definitely on the verge of that. I've got very stable business contacts who are the least fear-mongering people you'll ever meet, who just simply said they're investing now in manufacturing, in agricultural infrastructure right now, in everywhere in Australia. Some are moving to Bali. And the reason why they're doing it in Australia is like Australia, for example, has 30 days fuel. That's what we've got. So if basically there was a war and supply chains got cut off, potentially there's going to be fuel crises. So many people going, well, let's just get in there and buy into fuel companies or do stuff and find ways to set that up. We've got clients getting licenses to set up diesel fuel, for example. The point is we've got plenty of problems ahead. If a war happens, there's going to be possible food shortages because supply chains can't happen. And again, preparing for that means not only can you get through, but you can prosper by being the answer to the solution. So this is what people who are seeing the problems and not hiding from them are getting into now. I was actually talking to clients today who are based in Bali now, wealthy clients who said a lot of the Russian oligarchs are privately moving their wealth into Bali right now and into Singapore and places like that because they're expecting a worldwide crash in the next few years. And it's happening en masse, and they're doing it privately. They're moving off grid. The gold purchases and sales that are being shown on the records are suggesting that people are seeing things that way right now. Gold has gone up significantly. So keep in mind, it doesn't mean this is necessarily going to happen, but when the wealthy and the elite are taking protective steps, you'd be crazy not to at least be taking protective steps while still living your life as normal, expecting the best. And one of my favorite quotes is plan for the, hope for the best, but plan for the worst. So right now we're heading for extraordinary opportunity if we do this. One of my favorites, investment researchers, Porter Stainsbury, who I was put onto by a Rich 200 client who I worked with years ago, who said, you got to buy this guy's membership. He's a billionaire. He advises most of the high net worth on investment advisory. Very balanced guy, gives really good retirement income strategies, very good investment kind of suggestions and research portfolios and platforms. Really, really good. The best one I've seen by far. Very, very quality information on gold. I've used his stuff on cryptos, on gold. I was doing income strategies using their stuff. He pretty much, this is his book he wrote in 2019, and he said, he came out last year and he said, if you actually understand that by and large, two men, Larry Fink and Michael Bloomberg, control a lot of the world's wealth right now, he said, you will actually see we're heading for a very major collapse. And he said, and you absolutely want to protect your wealth, but rest assured, he emphasizes that the opportunity to grow your wealth, if you're smart and using the resources at your strategy, at your disposal, he said, there's going to be the best opportunities you'll ever see in your life, because civilization collapse, see this kind of stuff happens. Another billionaire, Bill Gonner, says the same thing. I could literally give you Kiyosaki's book. Many don't know that yours truly, Donald Trump, in 2012, and Robert Kiyosaki wrote a book called Why We Want You to Be Rich. And basically, Trump mentioned about the coming collapse himself and explained why he wanted to become president, because he wanted to do something about it. And then he's followed his blueprint to the letter in what he wrote in his book with Kiyosaki. Kiyosaki is talking openly about this. So the best speakers and the best experts are talking about this now, and about the inevitable likelihood of confiscation of wealth, which starts to head. And the Sovereign Individual book, written in 1995, says once the Roman Empire knew that it was dead, they just started stealing citizens' money. They didn't care anymore. They didn't try and hide it behind anything. They just did it. They just started doing it. In the Australian Banking Act, for example, they can recall all your gold on the mints within 30 days. Just raise your hand if you didn't know that. They can recall your gold. They can just take it off you. They've set the system up well and truly. In 1933, they confiscated gold in America when the Depression happens. And basically, it always happens with the kind of system that we've got right now in the banking. It always happens. And again, it doesn't last. So it means the ending of the system as you know it, and the move toward digital currencies and things like that. And honestly, it moving towards a push to at least minimize the effectiveness of cash in favor of digital currencies. That's why, as part of my balanced portfolio, just to be clear, I still have cash, I still have banks, but I'm certainly looking at digital currencies. I'll certainly look at gold and precious metals, shares and things like this. And shortly I'll show you what the high net worth are doing right now. I'll show you what they're doing, they're elite, and what they've been following. And really all you have to do is follow a similar model to what I'm about to show you. And again, this is what's happened in previous history when societies and economies have collapsed. Gold and silver seizures is something that can be done. And Australia seems to love what I call the blow the mole up theory. In other words, in Australia, if there's a mole in your neighbour's backyard, in most countries, you send in someone to kill the mole. Australia, you just get a bomb and blow up the backyard, and that solves every mole that ever existed before time began. And it's kind of how Australia does things. So if we see a major collapse, you can pretty much rest assured there's a good chance Australia will go over the top with this sort of stuff. Worst case scenario, I don't think it will go very extreme, but these are the kind of things that can happen, and why you want to be taking asset protection strategies and even having offshore nest eggs, because this also happened in the Roman Empire. They stopped money being moved out of Rome. More and more countries are limiting movements of funds as they start to break down and get broke. And again, I'm painting a difficult scenario. And again, hopefully half of this won't even happen. But if you're protected for all scenarios, you're going to sleep well at night. And again, this Sovereign Individual book mentioned about an inevitable financial reset that would actually happen. And the truth is, some kind of reset or change is actually needed. The main thing is to position your wealth for crisis and make sure you set your life up to have the money and assets to do what you want and have freedom of choice, and to just keep growing your wealth and not being caught up in what's going on around you, but just paying a little bit more attention to protecting your wealth than you maybe have previously. So if I summarize what I'm saying, I'm not saying run off in fear and hide in the mountains. I'm just saying that 10 years ago, you could safely build wealth and know that by and large, you weren't going to have any major complications apart from governments poking their nose in every now and again and with lawsuits. Now, you're dealing with a whole different beast. You're dealing with a collapsing civilization where governments are going to be more prone to bring in methods and stuff to try and limit the damage, a bit like they did in COVID, where they locked citizens down and contained things. So you want to make sure you've got plan Bs. The Ukraine and Russia war, for example, when that actually happened and came out of nowhere, many Russians and Ukrainians were caught out because many Russians relied now on Western banking systems, and suddenly the sanctions meant they couldn't access their money. Many oligarchs who had wealth sitting over in the UK and across Europe had their assets frozen. The smart ones had their assets in St. Kitts and places like that, and they're well protected and they were fine. The many Ukrainians and Russians were caught out as well, and the smart ones had cash. The ones who didn't have cash were in deep shit. So again, part of your plan always would be having, I tell people, a minimum of 1 month's living expenses in cash on hand, preferably 3. And you want to be having gold, silver in physical as well as things like that. So, but again, all this opens up opportunities. I mean, all I've done is gone far out. My issue right now is not opportunity. It's just we've got more opportunity than ever right now. I mean, there's a need to educate people in financial like I'm doing here. There's a need for people to raise their spiritual consciousness and mindset stuff. So we've got a business in that. There's a need to help negotiate debt problems. And I mean, gosh, I'm like, I want to set up something in that. I'm speaking with different people right now to bring in more business ventures as JVs of people, just because I'm like, there's so much opportunity right now. I mean, the opportunity right now is an abundance because most people aren't taking action. They're just not. And they're frozen by what's happened in the last few years. So many remember the Great Depression for destroying lives, but they don't actually hear about the fact that more millionaires were made in that time than any other time in history. And it was because they were calm and they were ready for it. And so while everyone else is traumatized by what's going on, you can be one of these groups here and really, 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 really grow your wealth. The main thing to realize is time is running out, so to speak, and you want to make sure that you're protected, you're cashed up and ready to go and take advantage of the opportunities. Many people haven't even heard of this book. Just raise your hand or just mention if you have not heard of this book by Bancroft. Or is it Elliot? Okay, very few people have heard of this. Bancroft he wrote this book 150 years ago for the Rothschilds, the Morgans, and the billionaires. And it was designed to teach them the last 5,000 years history of wealth and show them how to grow their wealth and basically stay financially, basically maintain $1 billion of assets. And he gave the principles and he kept it hidden from the masses. They literally kept it among the families, but due to the internet in the last 20 years, its knowledge is now circulating. And if you're thinking it's got some kind of great magic clue, the sad thing is it actually doesn't. It brings people back to basics. It says, creating wealth is about solving big problems. Being stable, protecting wealth is more important than trying for quick speculative gains. Think 10 years rather than 1 year. That's another principle of the book, or 100 years rather than 10, but 10 years rather than 1. Always focus first on safety, and then as you get safety, then you can grow to find ways to increase return. But focus first on safety. Focus on protecting assets. Ignore volatility. Every study on people who've tried to make money by compulsive speculation as compared to people doing it other ways, generally the other ways end up winning out with a far less work by just hodling or buying and holding, or doing basic what's called medium-term trading rather than buying in and out and things like that. So the permanent portfolio methodology by Harry Brown, which follows the book, basically says you want to have your wealth. And this is by and large, if you study what Gates, Buffett, Rothschild, virtually every wealthy client I know follow this methodology, something along this kind of line. So you can put it in various ways. You may choose to have only 10% of bonds or no bonds. You may choose to have more cryptos. The point is you want to balance out your portfolio and make sure it's stable. So things like that. So basically, this is the thing. Thanks, Will. Will's giving some great comments, like give some overtime. He's enjoying it. Thanks, Will, for your kind feedback. And because of the fastening up of society, The old rule of balancing your portfolio yearly, quarterly now, the elite are looking every quarter, reviewing their positions and things like that. So you really want to be moving into this quadrant for those of you who've done this. And most of you, no doubt, are in the B quadrant, but you want to make sure your B and your I are working really, really well. My mentor on sovereignty taught me these are the 7 flags of a sovereign individual. You've got sovereignty on your cash flow. You've got sovereignty with investing, and you've got your wealth invested across the balanced portfolio. You've got some privacy. You haven't got all your stuff sitting in the system where the government can poke their nose in. You've got genuinely protected wealth. You're sovereign, that you're a mentor and you're helping others at the same time. You're building a legacy, because a legacy gives you meaning. The fact is, we all are only on this planet for a temporary period. When my partner died suddenly 3 years ago, I certainly realized that, and realized that our time was short. And you want to leave a legacy. You want to make sure that you being here has left something that's done good. Otherwise, you just really got to turn up, disappear like most people, and having done nothing. And we very quickly lose meaning in our life. Setting up structures in your home country, but also looking at an eventual plan B and looking at a second citizenship. And going back to the legacy, this is why foundations, you will not find hardly any really wealthy people who don't have foundations set up. That's kind of another part. And it's why just about all the Australians living here, the reason why most of the richest Australians pay next to no tax is they've got foundations set up, or they've got offshore stuff set up basically for their international businesses, and they use foundations to grow their offshore wealth. Very similar strategies to what the Clintons have done, what Trump has done, and people like that. So so that was the first thing. So growing your wealth. So really, in simple terms, solving problems in business and really getting back to basics. And I know this isn't some exciting get rich quick stuff, but I tell clients, when clients come to me and they say to me, because I'm not a licensed financial planner, so I can't give financial advice, I don't want to, I just say to people, follow the proven and tried principles. Always save part of your money whenever it comes in. Make sure you have a minimum of 3 months living expenses in cash or something liquid, and then keep growing from there into more assets and invest. And your first 10% you should never touch. You only grow wealth with that. You don't save to then go and buy something else. That's the basic idea of it. And the more you follow this methodology, it becomes a whole lot easier. So I always say, just solve a basic problem in what you're doing in your business. Like, I think right now there's a lot of opportunity in AI. There's AI software still to be released, which I'm being showed, haven't come out to the public yet. And I'm just sitting there going like, but the way this is going, I won't have to do anything in the next 3 years. I can just sit there and it will all be done for me. I saw a software the other day, but literally was creating a perfect marketing funnel for me with all the emails, and did all the social media video clips and everything for us, just all, and it got it as close to perfect as you can see. Not yet released to the public. It technically is out, but not many people know about it, and I can't share much about it because I've got a confidentiality with it. But yes, I'm seeing the new stuff coming out and I'm shaking my head. So there's opportunities galore right now, and you definitely want to make sure you're doing that. So that's the first thing. And like I said, having a short period of time, I'm limited what I can say. I would be remiss not to cover tax minimization and asset protection. I think this thing. So I've just got to go down my slides for some reason, do these weird jumping on this. So tax minimization. So we all pay too much taxes because, pretty simply, people don't know the tax matrix and don't understand how the system actually works. That's been having worked for the ATO, worked as a lawyer, been off the grid. It's just people don't understand how it actually works. And there's a good reason why in 2016, in Peter Martin's Sydney Morning Herald study in the Sydney Morning Herald, he discovered of the 56 richest Australians, have a guess how many paid tax. Just type in the chat. Of the 56, how many actually paid tax? Let's see who can get it. Next is 0, none. I'll give you a clue, it's not 0. The answer is 2. One paid $4,354, which was very kind of him, and another one paid $54,000. But what did they all have in common? They paid on average $1.7 million a year to their tax advisors and lawyers to deal with regulators. In other words, they knew the game and they knew how it worked. So most people are just scared shitless of the government, and people pretend they don't, but they actually are. And COVID showed that. I mean, Australia has a convict mentality by and large. I mean, we can see that. Like America, they pass gun laws and everyone goes and buys more guns. Australia, they pass gun laws and everyone's running to give them up. Like they've just passed a law in our state, and it's extraordinary. In COVID, they passed lockdown, they bring in speed cameras in Australia, and everyone's saying if you don't speed, you don't get caught. Thailand, they bring them in, and within a month they get rid of them because everyone's ignoring them and it's destroying the printers. So by and large, I mean, Donald Trump, I always say to people, if you really want to learn about taxes, look at Donald Trump. He just says, I don't pay any, it's all legal. And they say, do you want to see my tax return? We want to see your tax return. He goes, well, fuck off. You have to get a court order. In other words, he knows the system. He's like, fuck you, stay out of my space. If you get it, but I make no claims. I don't feel guilty. I don't feel scared. This is what I'm doing legally. And he knows the system. He knows that he is contributing in other ways. He knows that he gives jobs. He knows that he gives taxes in various other forms. He's just like, I'm not going to sit here and volunteer to give you taxes when, on average, when you add all the taxes up, this is what people are paying. And I don't recommend do what Lady Godiva did. She basically went naked to protest taxes. And her husband was horrified and, of course, hastily dropped the taxes. So if anyone wants to join me and go naked, we could always try that. That's one option. I don't know if Nick, how it would go if you and I, we can start it if you want, maybe. But the other option is like what Kerry Packer says. He said, I don't evade tax, I don't avoid it, but I'm not going to give you any donations. I'm going to do whatever it takes to legally minimize my taxes and go as aggressive and as hard as I have to deal with you fuckers. That's basically what he was saying. So this is something that I designed with a friend, but I think summarizes the game really well. The top of the game don't pay taxes because they own the system. The oligarchs in the middle don't really pay much either. Those who are too broke to pay any taxes don't pay any. So basically the sheep in the middle pay the taxes and fund everybody else. So if you really want to minimize your taxes, I either suggest you go broke as fuck or you get wealthy as fuck, because the more money you make, the more you can do what Trump did and pay really good people and set up structures and do things to legally minimize your taxes. So the best way to solve your problem is either do what most people do and kind of just earn as little money as you can, or do cash money and hope you don't get caught by living in fear, or just make a crap load more money and get rich. Who likes the idea of making more money to pay less tax? Anyone? Yeah, the more money you make. And I prove that in like a minute. I say, if you're making $100,000 a year only, would you pay 200 grand to set up a system or structure to restructure your business to move offshore and set up foundations? The answer is no. If you're making $1 million a year net profit and growing up to 5 million, you wouldn't think twice about it, you know? So in other words, the whole thing is the more money that you make, the more taxes you're going to be able to, less you'll pay, and the more philanthropy you will do. And you can use your money to serve your society rather than giving it for Albo and all of his lovely mates to basically go on their trips and give money away in socialist handouts. So I always show people, if you actually look at the numbers of not tax planning, it's pretty horrific. That's basically $100,000 over 20 years, making I think 20% per annum. That's how much money you would have at the end of 20 years for your retirement, depending on how much taxes you are actually paying. So it's pretty horrific. So if you're not as part of growing your investments, I go to people that this is so important. You could not make any more money tomorrow. You could make no risky investments. And if you can find a way to master the tax matrix, it's literally just as good as making money. Who would agree with that? Just as good to slash your taxes as it is to actually make money. In fact, it's better because you don't pay taxes on the tax savings that you've actually done. So just don't procrastinate on the things I'm teaching you today. I know I'm giving you a lot, but all I hope is that you take some kind of action. And the reason why is this is just a very simple example, which is shown. Let's say that you're age 40, your desired income is 100K in today's dollars. You desire to stop work at age 65. You have a 5% average return per annum. That's being cautious. You need $2 million invested at the moment. Let's just say at 5%. It would be $1 million for 10%. But the rule of 72 assumes that prices double every 10 to 12 years. And on current rates, it's probably less than that at the moment. But that's what you're going to need to stop work. So most people in Australia are destined to basically work their asses off and be caught within the matrix. So that's tax minimization. And the final thing I talk about is just some basics of protecting your wealth. And again, I'm just giving you like a snapshot overview of this whole thing. The best secret with asset protection, and I can tell you when I was a lawyer, I just say to people, even if you don't design the perfect strategy, I could tell you now when I was a lawyer and I was going to sue someone, the first thing we would look at is, A, do they have their money sitting in their own name and are they a goose? Or do they have their money in trusts? Or do they have it well structured? If they had their money in trusts or well structured, it's a whole new ballgame. And I just say an example. Let's just say that I have a choice. I'm a car thief, okay? I have a choice of stealing 3 really hot sports cars. One with no alarm, one with some alarm, one with the best alarm in the world. We can rest assured the one I won't steal is the one with the best alarm in the world. What's the one I'm going to steal? I'm going to steal the one without an alarm system because there's just minimal risk. So if I've got a choice of suing a sole trader in business, or suing someone who's got a company or trust, who am I going to sue? I'm going to sue a sole trader because a sole trader is easy. The tax office, I even used to tell people, if you are a sole trader and the tax office claims you owe them 300K you don't owe, you're fucked. There's nothing I can do for you other than send you to an insolvency specialist. If you have a company, trust or structure, I can send you to an insolvency liquidation restructuring, and I can probably work out a plan to restructure the business, get rid of the debt with no impact to your credit rating. That shows how just that one example alone, the moment you've got your wealth structured in entities, in companies, trust foundations, and that's why the secret is not about avoiding your moral obligation to pay it. It's about you deciding who gets it. And you want to control, not own your wealth. So I'm going to kind of give you 7 basic rules of wealth protection. And one is keeping your wealth is just as important as making it. And if you're not putting some serious investment of your funds into protecting your wealth, you're not doing what just about all the high net worth do, which is put, I think, up to 5% of their wealth just in preserving it. So in protecting your wealth, raise your hand here if you found out, if you lost all your money tomorrow, if it would stress you out at night. Just raise your hand. Yeah, absolutely. Yet most people have got car insurance, you know, even though that won't destroy your life if your car smashes, but they don't protect their net worth. They don't have a second mortgage over their house. They don't protect their properties. If you've got properties of equity sitting in it, you are a sitting duck. If I was a lawyer looking to sue you and I saw you had a property, lots of equity, shares in your own name and cryptos, I'd say, you fucking beauty, man. I would say to my client, sue this person because we can scare them. We'll send them a scary letter. We will hit them with letters and they'll end up settling with us. That's what we would do, you know, straight up thugs. So if we would see that you had assets sitting in your own name and we wanted to sue someone, you'd be it. And the average Australian gets sued 3 times in their lifetime or threatened to be sued if you're in business. That's the statistics, okay? So that's number 1. Own nothing, control everything. So you want nothing in your own name, or if you do, you want to be a penniless bum. You want to look so damn broke that no one wants to come near your wealth. You want to have it in entities, or you want to have it, if it's in your own name, secured by liens and mortgages. It makes it so hard that any poor lawyer that wants to sue you with their client is going to go, you are too hard. And I saw this years ago. A client actually got scammed by this awful trading guy, and We worked for hours, and in the end I said, there's no way we're going to be able to get this guy's money. It's got Nevis Trust, it's got, mate, you're going to have to literally give me all your money just to sue this guy, and you probably won't win anyway. So the third rule is that if this only really applies if, let's say, I call it a Donald and Daisy duck. So let's say you've got Donald and Daisy. Daisy is a doctor. Donald looks at home and is a stay-at-home dad with the kids. Who's the one that's most at risk of being sued? The answer is Daisy. So who's the one who should control the wealth? It's Donald, because Donald's basically not at risk of being sued. So that's more really relevant for couples who've got one who's at risk and one who doesn't. But that's a good one. Make sure you separate your entities out. And this is where a lot of people go wrong. So you want to separate them out between your various uses. So what that means is that, like, for example, I've got my Global Wealth Club. That's one business in one structure. I've got the Awakening Within, which is my spiritual motivation, which is another one. I've got my investment partnership with someone, the Global Investment Syndicate. That's another one. I've then got my foundation. That's another one. I've then got another entity, the whole other stuff. So everything is separate. So good luck for anyone who wants to get near me, so to speak. Yeah, and you definitely want your personal investments in a different entity than what you've got your business, because otherwise, if your business gets sued, your personal investments are basically in jeopardy if they're sitting in there. You want your property separate again, because if you've got rental properties, you can get sued. Landlords can be sued. And you ultimately want to go offshore as well as onshore. So as your wealth really grows, you want to have an offshore nest egg following the sovereign individual Roman Empire system. And finally, you always want to have the right team of experts to help you with your wealth. So in terms of finishing off on this one, on the asset protection, you've got companies. And look, the thing is, on the Global Wealth Club site, which I'll show you at the end, we've got some free trainings on this. So rather than me sit here and teach you on stuff, I just want to allude you to the issues. And if you want to learn more about these, you can go and become a free member and do our amazing free training, which is a gift for people and for all of you, which will cover and explain this all to you. And we're upgrading our free training as we speak, because my aim is to do the Elon Musk principle. Like Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, it costs nothing to use them for most people. They make their money from the small number that do. So I'm aiming to have the best, basically, education site that gives amazing free education on finances, on companies, on trusts, on foundations. And we're already having clients say your stuff is just really good, all for free. And then we just know that there's going to be clients who are going to want to work with us to pay to get some assistance. And of course, offshore, there's stuff on the site on that as well. And on our YouTube channel. And the biggest thing, because I tell people today that if you really want to live sovereign in Australia and keep your taxes minimised and well protected, there's only really 3 ways now you can do it. One is what I call the systems way, which is companies, trusts and super funds. Number 2 is an offshore plan B and go offshore and become non-resident. Third, which is what a lot of the wealthy do now, is stay in Australia and just simply have foundations. Because in Australia, we follow the McNaughton principle, but it says, provided that you're one of the foundations to relieve poverty, to advance religion, advance education, or benefit the community as a whole, then you get what's called full tax exemption, you get special protection, you get amazing government grants. My foundation, as well as tax exempt, my church foundation, has also got a $10,000 a month government grant from, sorry, not government, Google grant for free advertising. Who thinks that's pretty sexy? $10,000 a month from Google. Because why? Because governments want you and big corporations want you to do philanthropy. Governments are not able to meet the expenses of the population anymore. So if you're going to do philanthropy, you go, oh my God, thank you, thank you. They will throw money at you. They will give you tax exemptions like no tomorrow. They will be nicer to you in audits because they don't want to discourage you and get all over the media. It's just the best path you could just about ever go on. I don't personally do the private foundations myself anymore. I'm more focused on the public, mainly because the public system is so good in Australia right now, whereas they blatantly declared war on private foundations and they've been going after them, whereas public ones, that meet certain requirements and things like that. I've got all the same benefits by and large, just about as private. So I've gone that path. I did used to use private foundations myself, but stopped doing it because I just realized that unless they change the laws, if they change the laws in Australia and make public worse, then I'll change what I'm doing. But right now, the public foundation laws are basically the best in the Western world, along with America. We have amazing foundation laws, like amazing. So the benefits to a foundation is you can give back and make a difference and help your fellow citizen. And my experience is the more wealthy people are, the more that they're actually giving back. Asset protection and legacy, favorable government regulation, extraordinary amounts of tax exemptions and benefits, good public relations, and government grants. And they're growing rapidly, according to recent articles, among the super rich. On that note, let's take some questions.
Excellent. All right. Well, take questions again, to drop them into chat, or feel free to unmute yourself and let's have a discussion. I think there's a couple of questions in chat there as well too. So much information. Yep.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry about that. I just wanted to make sure I gave really good value.
So I've got one there from Will, who's asking, which banks are trustworthy?
That's like asking which of the mafia is trust. God, that's a difficult one, Will, because the problem is, I mean, the whole banking system itself. I don't like any of the big major banks myself. Apart ANZ, I'm with at the moment. I don't mind the ANZ bank, but again, you know, my rule is don't have all your money in any one bank. You're better off to have monies in offshore banks, onshore banks, a mixture of banks. Hong Kong's got some very good banks still. Australia, some of the smaller ones like Bendigo and a few others. But yeah, it's kind of just don't have all your wealth in one bank, as people found out a few weeks ago when everything shut down. So how do you
another question here about the US dollar, with the US dollar possibly going to crash and then printing more. What are your comments around about that?
Look, basically, when you keep printing money indefinitely, I mean, it can't sustain. I don't know how long it will take, but at some stage, the confidence in the currency and things like that is going to hit. That I just don't know when. I don't think it's going to be tomorrow, but certainly America is in a very difficult situation now. I mean, basically, you pretty much had Donald Trump blatantly had the election stolen off him, and I had people saying to me, well, I don't care if he won, if they did it or not, as long as the orange man gets out of government. So America's virtually on a civil war kind of tangent at the moment, and their cost of living is going through the roof. So yeah, I mean, the US dollar, I mean, it doesn't mean I don't use it, but you definitely want to, as you grow your wealth, you want to diversify currencies. You don't just want to have Australian dollars or US. You want to start looking at things like Swiss francs and Hong Kong dollar or things like that. You know, there's other options, euros. A lot of people are doing stuff like that, diversifying in currencies even.
And a couple of practical questions as well around how do you set up a foundation? What are the steps? Probably too much to cover right here at the moment.
Look, I'll tell you what you can do, Bill. Let me just quickly show you something. If you go to Global Wealth Club site, members login, you go into here, you get a free membership.
I can't see your screen, Warren. We've just got your slides still on.
Really?
You might need to unshare and then share that, that screen.
How's that? Is that better?
No. Oh, yes.
Yeah, so if you join in here, let me just quickly show you. So if you go into the Global Wealth Club site, you can become a free member. We've got free trainings. And if you go down here, Bill, we've got a bit of stuff on this. We've got a bit on foundations in here and type of structures. We've got a bit more asset protection to cover what we talked about, tax minimization. And we're about to beef that all right up to make that even better than ever. So Yeah, and for those of you who are basically here, I know there's a door prize Nick said, which is going to be, and we're going to be giving access to one of our financial mastery courses. So yeah, you can learn more about asset protection, that kind of stuff. I'm planning to even give access to some of these events for free. I'm going to bring them in here because we did some events that were huge hit about sovereignty, about asset protection. So yeah, there's even one on foundations here somewhere. I'm just trying to find where it is. I think it's this one, using structures for maximum benefits. So yeah, we're going to probably, if anyone really from this thing wants to have a look at this, any of these events, just let us know. And yeah, like there's one here on foundations that we've got here. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff on this site. In fact, our issue is we've got an abundance of stuff over here. But yeah, if you want to get started, the free ones are 8 videos of 56 minutes, so to speak, so 8 videos of 7 minutes each. So like a total of like 56 minutes is designed to make it very simple and easy to follow. So, and then if you're interested to find out more, then all you got to do is just complete a form and basically an inquiry form on our site, which we got right over here.
And I've just dropped that link into chat as well for anyone that wants it. And probably time for one more there. What are the problems you have with a private foundation versus, say, public foundation?
The biggest thing is, it's kind of like, in theory, for example, you shouldn't basically be extorted by the mafia, if you're in the mafia's city, but doesn't mean it will stop them doing it. So the problem with private foundations is you basically, in Australia, the government have straight out said they don't accept them. So it doesn't mean that the government's right on that. I think private foundations have a very strong sovereign base and foundation, but the government has said straight out, they've targeted them, they've gone after promoters, they've even banks are shutting down accounts of private foundations everywhere on government like request. So if you're doing one, you're really going to be in a bit of a fight, in a bit of a war. So if you want to do that, that's fine. It's just that I don't really like the idea of just being in a fight for the sake of it if I can avoid it. If I need to fight, I'll do it. Like if someone was coming to force a vaccine into me or someone trying to go after and take all my money off me, of course you're going to fight it. But I don't want to really pick a fight I don't need. And with foundations, our public system is so good that it's just not necessary. So again, I'm not saying you don't do it. You just got to realize what you're doing. And what I tended to find with private foundations was that people would go to these promoters, they promote it to them. And all I'd say to them is, well, are you aware what the HS says? And they're like, well, no. And I'm like, then I said, just check with the people who set up for you. But if the ATO comes after you, they'll stand by you. And they'd ring them and they'd always kind of just say, well, no, obviously we don't do that. We just set up for you. So I'm like, yeah, you'll be on your own if they come after you. And they've won 100% of the time in court when they've done that. And sure, there's ways to beat them in court, but are you really ready for that kind of a fight? And do you really want that? And most people say, well, I don't. So it's like, if you don't want that fight, then don't go that path.
And I think on that note, that's probably all we've got time for. So someone sort of summed it up there. Thank you. I'm now suitably terrified. But I think what Warren's presented here is a whole lot of options for us as well too. And
opportunities, yeah.
And the opportunities are there. And of course, there is a big opportunity there. If you go along to the globalwealthclub.com website, you can certainly get some more education around this as well too. All right, well, let's now we do have a door prize tonight too, don't we, Warren? Do you want to tell us what that is?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, what I want to do is for anyone who wins the door prize, we have an Ignite membership, which is valued basically at $9.97. So it's, let me just show it here. So this is what we do it, but we're going to give this as a gift. So hang on. Your screen sharing is so different to what I'm used to doing. Trying to find one. Here we are. Okay, can people see this?
Yep.
Okay, so the Ignite membership here, this has got like a financial mastery. It's kind of about $9.97. It's got a lot more advanced education in this one. There's a financial mastery program in there. We've just got to fix this up a little bit at the moment, but it's got everything. It walks you through the basics of a financial plan, of everything like this. It includes basically not only the education, it includes access to our events when we do them for free for the next 12 months. And it also includes a 30-minute onboarding call as well. So just basically, this is the door prize. It's a pretty good little thing. And the only issue you've got is turn off your Netflix. You won't need it anymore.
Excellent. All right. So we've got a special way of drawing this tonight, which is our Wheel of Names. So everybody's name is in the Wheel of Names. A couple of people have actually disappeared early, which means we draw their name out. Then bad luck to them, but good luck to you in that we'll do a redraw. So let's spin the wheel and find out who our lucky winner is tonight. There we go. Sort of our drum roll, virtual drum roll. As it spins around, lands on our lucky winner, which is Gordon Green.
Hey, Gordon. Well done.
Is Gordon still here? Oh, yes, I can see him there. So well done. All right, what we'll do, congratulations, Gordon. What we'll do is we will introduce you by email to Warren tomorrow, and then you can organise to access to that with Warren directly. All right, well, once again, thanks, Warren, for your time tonight. Always a pleasure listening to you, and good to have caught up just I think it was about a month or so ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So we'll probably have you back again, I think. So I think someone mentioned there that there's just sort of a heap of information there, and there's a ton of stuff that I know that Warren has.
Each of those topics need a webinar of its own, to be honest. We need to have one on just on the finances alone, one on the asset protection loan, one on tax, and that's normally what I do. So I tried to do 3 in 1 to just give everyone an overview.
So if you'd like to hear Warren again, then yes, we will have him back. And of course, for tonight's session, it will be up on the Smash Go YouTube channel tomorrow afternoon. If you haven't subscribed to that, we'll drop the link. Well, actually, the link is now in chat. So if you go there, subscribe to the channel, click that little bell when you've subscribed, and then you'll get a notification as soon as the video has been uploaded or the replay is uploaded. And of course, if you know anyone else that you think might be interested in this, then feel free to share that link with them as well too. For those that do want to get in touch with Warren, the link to the Global Wealth Club is in there. There is a contact form in there that you can contact Warren with. And of course, you'll find him on, I think you're on LinkedIn, aren't you, Warren?
Am I? I don't really use it.
There you go. Don't contact him on LinkedIn because he doesn't use it. Just go through the Global Wealth Club.
I haven't used it for a long time.
Excellent. Well, let's put our hands together and thank Warren for his time. We'll be back here. Now, I should say, if you want to save the chat with all those bits and pieces in it, click the 3 little dots, which is on the top right-hand side of chat when you've got it open. Or if you've got an older version of Zoom, it'll be down the bottom. So save that, and a link will come up where it's saved in your computer. Click on that link, that'll open it straight away. Otherwise, thanks again, Warren. Thanks everyone for coming along tonight. Have a sensational evening, and we'll see you back same time next week.